Hello, welcome to Old School Eats. I am Old School, and today we're going to be doing beef ribs. Many folks feel that this is the actual king of barbecue. I know I have another video on brisket. Both of these guys are fantastic. When it comes to beef, that sort of unctuous flavor, I don't know if that's even the right word, very fatty, but delicious flavor you can get out of beef ribs is very similar to what you can get in the point meat on a brisket. The benefit is you really can't screw up beef ribs. Now, they're not cheap, but they come out fantastic. They're the dino ribs. I'll be showing you how we clean them up. There's not a lot of cleanup to them. How we season them up, and then how we cook them. One of my favorites, people often serve them on the bone, those dino ribs. I've never seen someone be able to eat a whole one in my group, including me, as odd as that may seem. So one of the things that I do sometimes is I'll take those ribs after you have the presentation and cube that meat up, and it becomes almost like burnt ends. But it is one of my favorites. I got these from a local place called Heights Market, but you can get them from Costco, you can get them from anywhere. And they are fantastic. So we'll be right back cleaning up beef ribs and getting to the cooking. All right, we're back with Old School Eats. We're going to work on our beef ribs now. I've got them cut out of the package over here. I'm gonna get a little paper towel, pat them dry, show you what these guys look like if you haven't seen them. You know, it's funny, depending on where you get these from, you can get them from Cisco, Restaurant Depot. I got these from Heights Market here locally. Really good beef market. The size and the thickness is very different, but they're always these 3 core bones. They're great marbling on these. I believe these are choice Angus. Now, there's 2 primary schools of thought with regards to trimming these. One is don't trim them. But the second one is there's silver skin here. And that silver skin, as the meat cooks, will cause the meat to constrict and it'll kind of puff up your ribs. I don't really have a problem one way or the other with this, but you're not going to get a lot of your rub to adhere to the fat. So I'm going to probably trim a little bit off of this. There's not a lot here. The other thing to talk about is the membrane on the back. There is a membrane. I do not remove that membrane. It's the only thing that really holds this thing together. Now, when you're done cooking these, you get the cool cut, the giant brontosaurus rib, and then you can gnaw on it. But that membrane, and there's a membrane that goes all the way around the rib, is not really a good bite. It's chewy, some people like it, right? But the way I treat it, and I mentioned it in a previous part of this clip, I'll take the meat off the bone, I'll cut that membrane out that's left, and then I'll cut them up into cubes. So yeah, if you remove that membrane, they make almost like a burnt end. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at these and see what I can get off of here without causing a big problem. But generally speaking, the silver skin just doesn't bother me that much on these. It is just like any other silver skin. If you can get underneath it, you don't want to take a whole lot of meat out. You want to get a good foothold underneath it with your knife and angle your knife up. Carry it across. That's really all there is to it. That is the advantage of trimming silver skin, is it helps you trim it. Now with these are really flat. It's a really nice rib. I can probably just do it by going parallel to the surface without losing much, if any, of the meat, while still getting most of, if not all of, that silver skin off. Now, sometimes you'll get a rack like this, and there'll be a big sort of vein of fat, and you'll be tempted to carve that son of a gun out. I'm here to tell you don't do that, because it will cause weird pooling, and it's not going to give you enough of a benefit to go through and do that. So again, when it comes to trimming, and obviously love to get your opinion on it. For backyard stuff, first of all, it doesn't matter that damn much, because whatever you're producing is probably going to be the best those people have had in a long time, unless you happen to live in Central Texas or something, or I don't know, Myron might be mad if I don't mention Georgia, but I am partial to the Texas barbecue, as it were, not their football teams though. So I'm going to go through here and get that whole thing out. Take that off. Continue. And if you got little flecky bits on the side that are going to burn up a little bit, it's sort of the same rule you have with brisket. You don't want things that will just, you know, get burnt up in the heat of the cooker. I'm going to take this one pretty clean because it's working pretty easily with me. And then we'll season these the same way we did the brisket, if you remember from the brisket video. I'm going to take one of them, what I'll call Leroy and Lewis. I don't know that that's a fair moniker, but that's where I saw the combination, which is the salt pepper blend, and then Lowry's seasoned salt. And then I'll do the other one with my standard beef, which is salt and pepper, and Cosmo Q cow cover, coarse cow cover. And we'll cook those at the same time in the same gravity feed cooker as we're doing the briskets. Now I'm not going to dig into there. I noticed that fat kind of digs in a little bit far. There's a little bit of silver skin there. It's not too bad. This, if I take that off, it's going to chop the edge off. So I'm not going to screw with this much anymore. I'm going to get it seasoned up, and then we'll get these guys in the fridge. We're going to dry brine them the same way we dry brine the brisket in the brisket video. A word about dry brining. Wet brine is submerging in a liquid with salt and sugar, other things. Dry brining is using a salt, and sometimes, as I understand, a baking powder or baking soda. I don't ever do that though. But dry. What you want is to pull some of the moisture out of the meat so that that salt can get absorbed by that moisture and then be pulled back into the meat. We're going to do that with all of our beef products. I do it with my pork products too, but for beef I do it longer. I'm going to put these in today and we'll be cooking them tomorrow morning. So let me get these seasoned up and we'll be right back. All right, we've got the ribs in our bus bin. You can tell I've done the brisket video and the ribs video at the same time. For those of you who watch the brisket video, see I've got a little remnant of the coarse cow cover. So I've got it over the side. This is the membrane side. Nothing's really going to adhere to this side. It's funny, I was watching Bradley Robinson the other day, and he's got the same OCD problem that I have. I can't not season it. And I know it's probably a waste of rub, you know, because it's not going to get through anyway. But it just feels wrong not to put something on here. So I'm going to give it a light coat, if for nothing other than aesthetics. And maybe some people do actually eat that part. I don't know. Make sure you get the edges. And while these look thin, during the cooking process, they're going to plump up like ballpark franks. And I'm telling you, if you're in a closet somewhere and you've never had smoked beef ribs, first, I'm sorry you don't have better friends in your life. But second, if I happen to have been the first person who caught you and told you about these things, you're very welcome. Because as much as I love brisket, and I do think brisket is the ultimate test of a home cook's barbecue, the beef rib is just spectacular. So here we are going on with the Lowry's. Again, this is a smaller seasoning, so we don't have to go as heavy. But this is beef, so it can take some seasoning. There is no salt added in there, so we're not running the risk of over salting, which is something you have to be careful of. Always check your spices to see if they've added salt or sugar, because if they do, then your intention to season to level 1 may be screwed because you've got salt in 3 of your seasonings. I happen to use 3 different seasonings on my ribs, and if I wasn't careful about it, they'd be salty as hell. So this is all seasoned up. I'm going to get it in a rack. So when I dry brine these, I put them in a pan, in a rack, so they're sitting up, and the refrigerator can do its job. So that's it. That's all it's going to be, and then we're going to get into the cooking portion and walk through how we'll prepare these beef ribs. All right, we're back with Old School Eats. We're out in the outdoor kitchen, which we have yet to name, and I've got our beef ribs. So the beef ribs today, we showed you the other day trimming them. Actually, it was yesterday. Trimming these up, getting the silver skin out of there, and then seasoning them up to do essentially a dry brine overnight. So I put these guys in this pan, and I've got 2 different ones. If you recall, we talked about doing 2 different flavor profiles. This one is my traditional cow cover, which is Cosmo Q's with salt and pepper. And this is the Lowry seasoned salt with salt and pepper. We're gonna cook them the same time, we're gonna cook them the same way, and we're gonna see if the flavor profile is significantly different between the 2. I'm gonna pick one of these guys up so you can sort of see a little bit better. Got the seasoning all over it. And these guys are gonna go on the gravity cooker you see behind me. We'll get you closer to that in a second. And they're gonna go on, we wanna get them up to about 203 degrees. It's just like brisket. I am choosing not to wrap these. Normally I would pan and wrap ribs. My thought right now is not to. Now, we got a late start today. Here in Florida today, it was like, I don't know, 50 degrees this morning. My gravity feed cooker was very cold. It took me a longer time to get it up to temperature. And so I've got a constricted cooking window. That's okay, but I don't want to be up at 3 in the morning. So I can make the call later today, depending on how fast the ribs are cooking, if I want to pan them and wrap them and get them accelerated or not. And I'll make that call later today. But for right now, we're going to get them on the cooker, get a drip pan underneath them so that we don't drip down onto the food that's going to be beneath it, which are going to be the briskets, and we'll get going. All right, so we're going to move over to the cooker. I'll start by actually explaining a little bit about which cooker we're using. I'm using a Myron Mixon gravity feed cooker, G20. Has 9 racks in here, and I want to open it up and let heat out. I'm kind of traditional about that. I'm sure that the oldies out there know that it doesn't dissipate that fast, but I'm still pretty anal about it. But the 9 racks are pretty narrow. If I were cooking pork ribs, I could get 9 full racks on there, and they're full hotel pan depth, which is fantastic. For beef ribs, even without the silver skin, they sort of bunch up. They chunk up. And so I don't want them to chunk up and touch the top. And because even though we're doing 2 separate videos, brisket and beef ribs, I'm cooking them at the same time. So I'm gonna have my beef ribs up at the top, and I'm gonna have the brisket down below it. Now, I'm also a bit of a stickler about drips. So I put drip pans underneath it to try and keep things as clean as possible. So I'm gonna open this up. We're at about 250 on the cooker. We've got oak wood in the bottom of the gravity feed cooker. Remedial course on gravity feed smokers. There's charcoal going down this chute. As it burns in the bottom, the ashes or the embers fall onto the wood in the bottom, which create the wood smoke. I happen to love it for beef. I've got another cooker you'll see in other videos, which is a pellet cooker by Myron Mixon, which is very different, and we'll cover that then. But for right now, we're going to load these ribs up. Right. So, here is our Lowry's. We'll go to the back. Our cow cover. We'll go to the front. I want to create a little bit of space between them so they got good airflow. Use my asbestos hands to put that in there. I had a rack in here I will reserve for later use if we end up panning them. And then that's going to go right under to create a drip tray. And we're going to let these guys roll until we get some temp that we want. All right, we're going to check our beef ribs. I got to open up the cooker. We're going to temp them. Oh, they look fantastic. You can see the pullback from the bone. We talked about it in the trimming video why I didn't cut that membrane off, because otherwise this thing would be falling apart. We're 153 here, 156, 157 there. Same back to front, which is really what you want. So they're cooking nice and even. We're going to keep letting them roll. They've got to go quite a ways. We can speed it up like anything else if we wrap them. But this was the experiment this time. I'm going to try and do these unwrapped. I saw Bradley Robinson doing them unwrapped, I think it was, the other day, and it was something I've never done before. That's our plan. We're sticking to it. We'll be back in another couple hours to check on them again. All right, we're back out in the outdoor kitchen. It is dark. Fortunately, I bought some light kits, and I think they're working pretty well. Thanks to my new camera person, Holly, made sure they didn't have a halo over me. Malcolm had to bail early. So we're going to check the beef ribs. As I mentioned, this is the first time I've done beef ribs all the way uncovered. I typically, at about 160, would pan those, wrap them in foil, and then take the rest away to speed the cook up. But watching folks online, this is a different flavor profile, so I want to give it a shot, see what it's like. So we're going to check the temperature right now, see where we're at. Well, they look nice. We're about 163, 168 in the back there. Looking between those bones, there we go. 160, 168. I'm going to spin these around, just in place, just to even out the cook. Probably unnecessary to do that, but we're going to let those roll. Looking pretty good. Let's still over their pan. I'm not sure how much they've actually, not a whole lot is reduced out of there, but that is keeping the cooker clean. We'll take a look at the other pans. Again, the brisket's nice and clean. Pushing some tallow out, but nothing bad. Cooker's performing like a pro. We'll let these guys go. I suspect I'll be back out in about another hour to foil boat the other brisket. And then I think it's going to take probably another 4 hours to finish all this up. And then we'll get them into the holding oven. All right, we're going to give this a try. It's very late now. The ribs are just coming off, and I'm going to wrap them in butcher paper for the hold. I discussed earlier that I wasn't going to wrap them for the cook, so I let them go. They're the last thing coming off. They were on, I would say, about 30 minutes longer than the last brisket. So, I am sans cameraman, so I've got a piece of butcher paper here. I'm going to get the ribs out, or the first rack. I've got tallow from my brisket cook. Here are the ribs. We got some nice bend there. They look very good, actually. Put them like this. May not have enough paper. I'm not a big butcher paper guy. Put some tallow over this bark. The bark is nice and crunchy, but they tell you to get a little bit of tallow on it when you wrap them. That can't really hurt. That's my toothpick that lets me know this is my standard seasoning. And I'm not trying to cook with this, so I think that's going to be sufficient. We'll get the other piece of paper. Which somehow I had the good sense to make a little bit bigger. Here's our other set of ribs. They're temping at just over 200. Very tender to the probe, which is the real test. A little bit of that tallow. Guys that work with butcher paper well are rock stars. I am not gifted in that direction, as you can tell by the mockery I'm currently making of this. But I'm trying to be authentic here. This is, if you've ever struggled with butcher paper, we're in the same camp. I know those guys always get this stuff to fold up perfectly, which kills me, because I never do. But we now have them wrapped. We're going to put them in the holding oven, which is inside, and we'll be back. All right, I've got my bus bin with the 2 racks of beef ribs that we did yesterday. I mentioned previously in the video they were not wrapped for the cook. They cooked entirely unwrapped up to their 201 or so degrees, which is something I've not done before. Then I wrapped them in butcher paper with a little bit of tallow. And now we're going to unwrap this present. They've been in the holding oven overnight, or for 10 hours. They look pretty good. Now I know the cool guys, there's not enough jus to get tallow on there. Let's see what we got. Should not slice into a bone. That's a good looking rib. That is a good looking rib. This is the membrane that we talked about before. It sort of peels off the bottom. Not a great bite. Some people like it. It's chewy. I'm going to go ahead and cut this other one. The bones on these ribs sort of come together. I'm very pleased with the bark, which was what this experiment was really about. This looks like the real. All right. So there are our beef ribs. The bark is very good. I'm going to actually, should I just take a bite like a caveman? Nick's my cameraman. My son Nick is my cameraman.
I think you should just take a bite.
All right.
That's thumbnail right there.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Okay, so the test was for the bark.
The bark is fantastic.
And the bark is absolutely stupid good.
I think that was a success for the Unwrapped test.
Wow. Okay, so Unwrapped rocked. Moisture is fantastic. The render was fantastic. And we got bark. Now, the big thing was getting that bark on a gravity feed smoker rather than on an offset, which I don't have. So, big win. Cooked at about 250 all day. Monitored temperatures. Pulled it off. Wrapped it in the holding oven overnight. Beef rib success. If you like this video, make sure subscribe, like, hit the notification bell. I'm supposed to say all these things. I'm sure Nicholas will remind me of it at some point. And we'll be putting more videos up as soon as we can.